Welcome to the 97 Republic YouTube channel, where I react to UFC news and live events. So I kindly ask that you hit the like button and the subscribe button, as that will really help this channel grow. And to ensure that you don't skip a beat, feel free to click the notification bell. That way you can guarantee that you don't miss any of the action. I really hope you enjoy this. Main card predictions for UFC Fight Night Marvin Vettori versus Dolidze in a card that feels like the heading could be records, and not necessarily in a good way, not necessarily pertaining to achievement. If we look at the record, especially the professional mixed martial art records of these fighters, doesn't make for good viewing. To put it into perspective, so if we take all of the losses of fighters fighting on the main card, now keep in mind we have 6 fights on the main card, usually it's 5. There's 76 losses total. Now to put it into more perspective, if we took out 3 of those fighters, we'd have an amount of 72 losses divided by 9 fighters, which results in about 8 losses per fighter, which is a lot. It is a lot, but doesn't mean that it's probably going to be a bad card, due to the fact that there is reasoning behind having a lot of losses. Guys tend to just put on spectacles and they don't mind getting knocked out, put everything out on the table. So somewhat excited. So starting off the main card, in the featherweight division, we have Choi versus Vallejos. Now, full transparency, feels like someone is being used as bait. It feels like leading lamb to the slaughter with regards to Choi versus Vallejos, where Choi has a record of 11-7, and within the UFC he has 4-6. Not the best record. Vallejos is making his UFC debut fighting on Dana White's Contender Series. He is 14-1 inside of his professional mixed martial arts career. His only loss came to Gene Silva via unanimous decision. The same Gene Silva who is knocking out people left, right and center inside of the UFC. Vallejos took him to the decision. And now Vallejos went on Dana White's Contender Series, beat his opponent, and now he is making his debut inside of the UFC. And it feels like Kevin might end this quickly. If we look at Choi, even though he's a good striker, and he is a guy who has fought Yusuf Zalal, who has beaten Yusuf Zalal, he has fought against Movsar Evloev, so he has had tough opponents within the UFC. With that being said, he tends to get into situations which I wouldn't say he's fully equipped to handle. Seeing that he is a good striker, good at range, good at dictating range, really keeps his opponents at the end of his punches, and then for some reason he enters the pocket and tends to be his damnation because he gets knocked out. And seeing that Vallejos has a very strong boxing stance, he's very good in close quarters, very good inside of that void, I think we all know what's probably going to happen. So I'm picking Vallejos to win, and I'm going to go first round knockout. He's a good boxer, has good head movement, has a high guard, doesn't get hit a lot in terms of getting hit flush, has good defense, and mixes it up, goes to the body, goes to the head. He is a good boxer. Well, within the UFC, I think he gets it done. I think he knocks out Choi in the first round. Then moving on to the second fight in the light heavyweight division, Nurgozhay versus Ribeiro. Now, with regards to Ribeiro, 16-7, 1-2 inside of the UFC. Once again, a guy who has an incredibly long wingspan. The man has slender man arms, and he utilizes it well. Has good technical striking, has a good jab. He is very aggressive, is a volume striker. The problem, once again, the same that applied to Choi. Whenever Ribeiro enters the void, enters that close distance, his chin is up, making him susceptible to getting knocked out. And with regards to Nurgozhay, when I watched his Dana White Contender Series fight, as I analyzed it, saw that he had a sort of mannerism where he constantly either wipes off his eye or touches his face. Didn't make much of it. Basically the same that Dustin Poirier does whenever he fights. He pulls up his pants. So just an odd mannerism. Do think that it could trouble him in the future, but I saw it. Didn't make much of it. And then at the end of the first round, when he went to go sit on the chair in his corner, his cornerman spat in his face with the water in his mouth. No wonder the guy's constantly wiping off his face. It made sense. I would do this. What are we doing? Anyway, it was probably one of the strangest things I've ever seen in my life. But Nurgozhay, he's not a volume striker. Has a lot of one-off punches, one-off kicks. Has good kicks, especially good head kicks, which he used to get his win, his victory in Dana White's Contender Series. I do think that the Ribeiro might be a problem for him, seeing that Ribeiro is a volume striker, is really good at dictating range. He just has to avoid getting close. But with that being said, I think Dio is going to win. I think Nurgozhay is going to win. I think he knocks Ribeiro out. I'm going second round knockout. Tend to happen that Nurgozhay isn't the most active in the first round, where he uses the first round to set up a lot of his shots that he would use later on, especially with regards to his head kicks. I think the same thing happens. I think Nurgozhay gets it done. Making his debut inside the UFC, I think he knocks out Brandon Ribeiro. Then moving on to the next fight. Damon Blackshear versus Cody Gibson. In the bantamweight division, Damon Blackshear, his record is 15-7-1, 3-3-1 within the UFC. The one obviously being for a draw, not a no contest. And with regards to Damon Blackshear, his skill set is technical striker, keeps his opponents at the end of his punches, has nasty knees, has a really good jiu-jitsu game. He has a twister submission, one of only 3 twister submissions ever within the UFC. I know for a fact the other one is Bryce Mitchell. I just don't know who the other one is. And has good wrestling, where it's somewhat unconventional. It's not a strong wrestling base. His takedowns is very unconventional, but it works. Once again, the only problem, it feels like it's a common theme, is the fact that whenever Damon once again enters that short range, enters the pocket, enters the void, he is susceptible to getting knocked out due to the fact that his head and his chin is exceptionally high. The guy's 5'11", 435 pounds. He is exceptionally tall for 135 pounds. And due to that fact, he is susceptible to getting knocked out whenever he enters the pocket. We saw that happen in the Montel Jackson fight, where as soon as he entered, it was in the first 30 seconds of the fight, as soon as he entered, Jackson landed a 1-2 flush, knocked him out clean. So he is vulnerable whenever he enters that range. And I think against Cody Gibson, he will enter that range. Now, Cody Gibson is 22-10 in his professional career, 3-5 inside of the UFC. He had 2 stints in the UFC. His first stint, he went 1-3, got cut, then basically came back, and now he's 2-2. Also a tall guy, 5'10", for bantamweight is really tall. And with that being said, has a good jab, has really good wrestling, has good jiu-jitsu. I mean, he made his debut against Aljo, and in that fight he took Aljo down 4 times, which is insane. Now obviously Aljo wasn't as good in 2014 as he was in 2020, but that's still a somewhat good accomplishment for Cody Gibson. Swings hard, not the most technical striker, swings hard, and I do think that he would definitely have the upper hand in wrestling against Damon Blackshear. I do think that it could be a problem, and that is why I'm picking Cody Gibson to win. I think at the end of it all, Cody Gibson will determine where this fight takes place. If he wants it to take place on the ground, I think the fight takes place on the ground. And with regards to their jiu-jitsu game, even though Damon is really good in his jiu-jitsu, he's very good at top control. I've never really seen him use his jiu-jitsu as aggressively when he's on the bottom. I think Cody basically dominates him I think unanimous decision victory, Cody Gibson in that fight. Then moving on to the next fight in the lightweight division, Alexander Hernandez versus Kurt Holobaugh. Now, with regards to Alexander Hernandez, 15-8 in his professional mixed martial arts career, 7-7 within the UFC, has fought some big names within the UFC. He has managed to knock out Beneil Dariush, fought Donald Cowboy Cerrone, fought Jim Miller, fought Renato Moicano. So he has seen a lot of really good opponents within the UFC. And with regards to his skill set, predominantly a striker, would initiate in wrestling exchanges if he has to, has good striking, very technical, has really good footwork, really good head movement, and uses a plethora of strikes, uses his punches well, uses his kicks well, against Kurt Holobaugh, whose UFC career has been interesting. So he started at the regional circuit, then got signed to Strikeforce, fought in Strikeforce, fought inside the UFC, got cut, went back to the regional circuit, dominated the regional circuit, got signed to the UFC once again, so his second stint within the UFC, lost 3 in a row, got cut once again, went back to the regional circuit, and then, you guessed it, came back to the UFC. Now his record is 21-8 and 2-5 within the UFC. And looking at it, his fighting style, usually when the announcer announces the fighters, they'd say this man is a freestyle fighter. When they announce Kurt Holobaugh, probably say this guy is a grit fighter. Of course, that's basically his fighting style, it's just grit. Has good head movement, doesn't have good footwork, basically throws almost everything in his punches, and could basically be classified as just grit, where he constantly moves forward, and we'll see who gets knocked out first. Has good strikes, especially within the clinch. So just a tough, durable guy. If you want to knock him out, you have to do it this way. The guy's chin is insane. Now, with that being said, he does have a weakness, wrestling defense, where he has been susceptible to getting taken down. And I do think that would prove to be vital in this fight. I don't think Alexander Hernandez wants to stand and fight with him due to the fact that Alexander's chin doesn't compare to Holobaugh's chin. The man's chin is made out of granite. So I think Alexander would try and take him down, basically just control him in the fight. Could see a finish. However, I'm going with unanimous decision victory. Alexander Hernandez gets it done. Then moving on to the next fight. In the welterweight division, the co-main event, where Shitty Njokuani is taking on Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos. Now, Shitty, not Shitty, guys, Shitty, and his nickname is Bang Bang. Insane. Probably one of the best nicknames, especially when looking at his name. A kickboxer, doesn't have the best footwork, where he stands very flat-footed, doesn't throw a lot of volume, has a lot of one-off strikes, especially kicks, especially leg kicks. However, he is exceptionally good in clinching, which is odd. It's not something you see where a guy basically bases his whole fighting style off of clinch, but feels like Njokuani has done that, where he has used it to beat his last 2 opponents. Now, even though I think he might have gotten lucky with the McGee decision, he has really good strikes within the clinch, and that poses a massive threat to Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos, seeing that Elizeu is a striker and a very technical one at that, where he has had knockouts within his career. And one highlight that stands out is his knockout win over Sean Strickland at welterweight. Yes, Sean Strickland, where he caught Sean with a spinning heel kick, and then in that sequence ended up finishing the fight, winning via TKO. He has beaten the likes of Benoit Saint-Denis. So Elizeu has had a lot of good opposition within the UFC. I mean, the guy's 25-8-1. Inside of the UFC, he's 11-4-1. So he has had a lot of opponents, has seen almost everything stylistically. The only problem is, Shadi will probably fight on the front foot constantly. Zaleski fighting on the back foot. Don't know how good that is for him, even though he'll probably be comfortable with that. But there's only so much backpedaling and circling you can do till you get caught against the fence. I do think that's going to happen. I do think Shadi wins. I think he wins via unanimous decision. I think he gets Zaleski to clinch, gets Elizeu to clinch, and basically just grinds him out wins via unanimous decision in the co-main event. Then in the main event, a rematch, Marvin Vettori versus Roman Dolidze. Where in the first fight, we saw Roman Dolidze win the first round due to the fact that he was constantly fighting on the front foot, had the bigger moments due to the fact that he had this sequence where he for some reason landed 3 straight somewhat overhand rights. And then we saw Marvin Vettori in the second and third round basically just throw a lot more volume and ended up winning the fight. And that's basically what this fight is about, it's going to be power versus volume. And with that being said, Vettori is more experienced, has had more fights within the UFC. He is 19-7-1 in his professional career. Within the UFC, he is 9-5-1. And Roman Dolidze is 14-3 within his professional career, 8-3 within the UFC. And so not a big discrepancy with regards to fights they've had within the UFC. The only problem is the last 4 losses of Marvin Vettori's UFC career has been against Israel Adesanya twice, Robert Whittaker, and Jared Cannonier. Now, even though Dolidze's UFC record isn't bad by any stretch of the imagination, he's had a good record, has had good wins over the likes of Kevin Holland. Now, even though that was an injury, doesn't matter. He's beaten Anthony Smith, so he has had good victories. He fought against Nasruddin Imavov, lost via majority decision, and prior to that loss, he fought Marvin Vettori where he lost the first fight. The problem with this matchup is I'm picking Marvin Vettori to win due to the fact that I'm picking the guy who throws more volume, has better cardio, has more experience, Marvin's fought probably everyone you could possibly face inside of the middleweight division that are really good. He's fought Jared Cannonier, fought Paulo Costa. So, Marvin he's seen more of it. And volume tends to beat power, especially if you have to knock out Marvin Vettori. You would need a sledgehammer to knock out either Roman Dolidze or Marvin Vettori. And even though Roman has power, I don't really think that he would be able to knock out Marvin Vettori. So once again, Marvin Vettori puts an exclamation mark to this sequence, to the rematch, and basically goes on to beat Roman Dolidze once again. I don't think Roman would be able to take Marvin down. I do think that Marvin might actually attempt takedowns in this fight, just try and wear Roman Dolidze out. Once you deplete that gas tank, the power somewhat goes with it. So I do think, just stylistically, I think that Marvin has the advantage wherever the fight takes place. I do think that he has a more probable road to victory than Roman Dolidze has. And those are basically my predictions for UFC Fight Night Marvin Vettori versus Roman Dolidze. Let me know in the comment section, do you agree? Which ones do you disagree with? What do you think is going to be fight of the night? I would really appreciate that. Enjoy UFC Fight Night Vettori versus Dolidze.